Primary Sources for Classics. During your college career, you will be asked to write many papers, and most will follow the same format. You will pick a topic, find a variety of sources, and then you will write about it. Writing a paper for a classics class, however, can be different because classics emphasizes the use of primary sources. So, what are primary sources? In classics, we define a primary source as something that was written or created in the ancient world. A wide variety of things fall into this category. First, we have literature, such as plays and poems. We have philosophical works written by authors like Plato, and we have the work of historical writers, such as Tacitus. There are written sources which are not literature. For example, on the left is a Greek law code. On the right, we have the funerary stone, the headstone, of a slave who was a hairdresser. Written materials can be even more mundane. On the left is the endorsement of a candidate for an election, painted onto a wall, and on the right is a legal contract. Material remains of Greek and Roman civilizations are also considered primary sources. Material remains can be glorious remains of temples or beautiful vases, magnificent marble sculpture, or even just lamps used to light your house every day. While written primary sources are ancient, they are not necessarily contemporaneous with the events described in them. Even in the ancient world, some writers took on what they considered ancient history. Here are two examples of historical writing that are both considered primary sources. The Greek historian Thucydides wrote about the world he was living in, that is, 5th century BCE Athens. His work drew on many sources as well as his own knowledge of events. On the other hand, the Roman historian Livy decided to write a history of Rome from its beginnings, nearly a millennium before his own lifetime in the 1st century BCE. We know that he drew his information from a variety of sources, including oral traditions and written works. Both of these authors drew on other sources and interpreted the events that they wrote about. Thucydides took a certain political position on contemporary events and interprets his sources through that lens. Livy often tells us that there are two different versions of an event, and he will say that he believes one more than the other. Still, these authors reflect the societies of ancient Greece and Rome, and so they are still considered primary authors. So, how does one go about finding primary sources for a particular topic? If you have been assigned an essay on a particular piece of ancient literature, your task is easy. Read the piece of literature and be careful to read the preface or the introduction, as this will often contain very important and relevant information. If you have to find different sources on a topic, you will have to locate all the ancient sources that mention that topic. Resist the temptation to Google, because you will have no way to know the accuracy of the information you read. Instead, you are going to have to take a visit to a library. Scholarly encyclopedias are the most trustworthy place to search any classical topic. The Oxford Classical Dictionary is an excellent standard reference work in English. It's available at any library in the reference section, but there is no online version of this book. So let's say that you were assigned an essay in which you have to compare the sources on the so-called Conspiracy of Catiline, a 1st century BCE episode of potential treason against the Roman state. The Oxford Classical Dictionary contains a 2-paragraph entry on Catiline, the main player in the Conspiracy of Catiline. This is just a brief outline of what happened and who he was, but it's a good starting place for your research just to give you an overview of what happened. At the end of the entry is a list of the ancient sources which provide the information for our knowledge of the conspiracy of Catiline. You'll see listed Cicero and Sallust, and these are really the only ancient sources on this particular event. That will give you a place to start to look up your ancient sources. There are some reliable online sources that can be used for basic research in classics. You can find these on the Classics Research Guide at Wayne State's library website. If you click under Books and Backgrounds, you will find a list of these. Brill's New Paoli, a very extensive classics encyclopedia, is available online. However, this is not the best resource for the use of beginners because, as you can see in this entry about Catiline, Catiline has been listed by the Latin version of his name, Catilina, rather than by the anglicized Catiline. So if you don't know the Greek or Latin words that you need, it may be more difficult for you to find material in this resource. There are other places where you can discover the ancient sources that cover a particular topic. For example, you can look in your textbook, which may either mention the ancient sources within the text or include them in footnotes. And since you are already at the library, consider going to the area where books on your topic are kept and open up a few of them. Classics is a field that is still very much carried out in books, not in journal articles or any other of the formats that are used in other scholarly fields. Classicists like books, and so open them up, look at the bibliography, look at the footnotes, and you're likely to discover more sources that will be used for your research. Once you have found your sources, be sure to look up the names of the authors, find out when and where they lived so that you have some basic background information on them. Now you're prepared to begin reading your primary sources for classics.